Hey guys, I'm Reyfar, and I've got a little bit of a cold again. But today I'm going to talk about Red Devil, which I read over the weekend. Because I guess to start off, I was getting a bit tired of Cloud, which I might go into a little bit later. And I'm like, I just want to pick up a novel. So I'm like, alright, I'll pick up Red Devil because I had Black Angel sitting on my desk. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read that. I'm like, oh, I want to read Red Devil. So I read Red Devil, and I instantly fell in love with its premise. I definitely like it a lot more than Green Fairy. I'll just say off the bat, even though I think Green Fairy might have been, I guess, um, a more interesting story as a whole. But I really liked Red Devil, um, just because it really clicked with me. And I was telling you, I was talking about it a lot because I was reading it at work and some other places, and I found it really easy to explain the premise of it compared to a lot of the other things I read, where it's like it seems a bit wishy washy. It's like relationships. And it's very straightforward. So Alexei. So actually, wait. Quick recap. Green Fairy is uh, Soul, the Black Wolf in the last book, is having problems, and he starts hallucinating and dreaming of this Lutetian dancer from the Moulin Rouge called Nikki, and he comes and he saves him and helps him through his problems, and yeah. And in Red Devil, it continues from Alexi's point of view, and him, Sol, and Meg have moved out and moved to Vidalia. Vidalia. I always read it with a really long drawl, and I should probably stop and breathe. But as you can see, I'm really excited about it because I really loved it. Uh, so yeah, they move in, and Alexi's having a rough time. His sister's still over in um, Kyell, Russia, Siberia, they call it, in his town of Samorodok. I think Samorodok, or Samorodok, something like that. Yeah, and she's still over there, and her parents are beating her. It's a it's a really shit place. That's why Alexei escaped it. No, also because the persecution of being gay and whatever. And so he's got that going on, and he really wants to ask this guy out on the soccer team he plays for. And he doesn't have the courage, and then he's also being just. I would, this guy's been a huge dick to him. I mean, he's kind of bullying, but he's mostly just being he's just an asshole. And he's like, Soul's been a bit of prissy bitch, writing about his story and staring at the painting. He can't really get over it. He's still a bit too absorbed into it, I guess. It's kind of his life, which he kind of needs to grow a bit more. But that's always interesting, and yeah, and Alex is frustrated. It's like, oh, why can't I have a ghost or spirit to come help me? Why can't you help me, Nikki? I think there's a direct line. It's like, oh, why don't you help me or something? He's like, why don't I have a ghost to help me solve my problems? And then he gets frustrated and he talks to Meg, and we could try. And she's talking to her friend Athos, who's the vampire fox slightly mentioned in the last book. And it's like, oh, we could try summoning the ghost, but they need to use the painting, and of course Saul's super protective about it, so they wait till he's out, and they try doing this ritual to summon a ghost, and it doesn't really seem to work, and then out of panic and frustration to finish it, because they don't know Nikki's full name, or they kinda, and not really, and it's not really explained. I'm not sure, but Alexei spurred on to say, I need to make sure I'm pronouncing it right. Uh, there's a line with his name is, I think it's pronounced Konstatin, but I always pronounce it as Konstantin. But there's no E on the end, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Konstatin. But I always read it as Konstantin. And, yeah, he says the name, Nikolai Konstantin, and it summons. Well, the spirit that's bound and drawn to him is Nikki's dad, who was briefly mentioned. I was gonna go back and reread the part where he was mentioned to recap myself, but Red Devil does a pretty good job in recapping on who he was and expanding upon it, and he's one of my favorite characters. I quite like him, and he starts seeing things. He starts having dreams of I really want to say Konstantin, but I'm pretty sure it's Konstantin's life and him growing up and oh shit. The main thing is Konstantin is like a 19th century Russian honor guard with the Prohonskoby regiment. I'm pretty sure it was like something like that, and yeah, so he's all honor and shit, and yeah. Stopping here and going back to my original point, the reason why it's really easy to explain what it's about is I was excited, I calmed down and I was like, look, oh, it's pretty cool. Like, basically, this guy, he's having a rough time and he wants to ask this guy out on his soccer team. So he summons a ghost to help him because I said it's like the second book in the series called Dangerous Spirits, and in the last book, a ghost helped his friend with his problems, and he's like, why can't I have a ghost to help my problems? So he asks a ghost to help him ask this guy out, as well as save his sister back in Russia. And, that's pretty easy to explain why. It's like, there's an interesting story there. Just in saying, he summons a ghost to help him ask someone out, which is pretty cool. And yeah, so basically he's also trying to ask Konstantin to help his sister Kat back in Samrodaka. and yeah, I don't really want to spoil it because I reckon it was pretty cool. Going through the story, I'll just say it ends quite well. Um, and I really liked in the later part of the book when you met Athos. He was really cool. Like it's like he constantly wore a cape, like because he's really into the occult, but he's really shy to is about into the occult. It's pretty funny. At least from like a reader perspective, I can see why Alexei was a bit perturbed by him at the start. Um, but he's a pretty cool character. Meg was really cool. I remember one of the because I read it in like 2 or 3 days. I spent mostly 2 days reading it. I read like half of it in a night and a morning, and then I stopped. And then the next day I was doing something. I think I was playing Civ and getting drunk. And then the day after, I read the rest of it, and I really couldn't put it down. I was really just intrigued by it. I called on to me a lot better than Green Fairy did. Oh yeah, so yeah, there's a really cool part where after Alexei ran away for the night because reasons and drama and story. And he goes to work and he's coming home the next day and he's going to like the bus stop and there's talking about like, oh, there's Otto at the bus stop, and then when I really like that I didn't catch on, and he's like, and then like he walks closer and he's like the Otto has like piercings all over, and he realizes it's Meg, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's Meg. Like I was probably just excited to see Meg outside the house as Alexei was excited to to see her there. That they gave a shit about him. Because I really like Meg. I tried looking through just before this video, because there was a really cool line, I really wanted to quote it, where uh, Meg and Electra are bantering about something, and he's like, if your tongue was any sharper, you'd have pierced your cheek as well. Or you'd have a pierced cheek as well, or something like that, and that was really cool. Um, I really need to get more in the habit of writing little notes as I go through, because I know there's a few times where when I was reading, I'm like, oh, I need to remember that when I talk about it later, and then like I forgot about it. But slowing myself down, there was actually one interesting thing. When I went back and reread parts of Green Fairy and reread the ending and stuff like that, which I did. Some of it was before I just finished reading Red Devil, and some of it was after it. Because there's a few things I wanted to refresh my memory when I was going through the ending of Red Devil. And towards the end of Green Fairy, Nikki says to Sol, like, Sol's like, oh, I'll tell people your story, I'll tell the people the truth. And he's like, and Nikki's like, no, like, he doesn't really reprimand him. He's just like, I'd rather you just honor me and help others. And the thing is, in Red Devil, Sol is just completely obsessed doing the exact opposite. He's obsessed, about protecting the painting of Nikki and writing his story. And not really focusing on the fact that, he should have been helping Alexi a lot more. Like, half of Alexi's strife, I think, at least to do with his life at home, was because he felt like he couldn't talk to Sol about it. Because at the start, he broke Sol's trust and with the painting. And partly because Sol was so obsessed with Nikki, that when Alexi told Sol, spoilers later in the back, when Alexi told Sol that he was having a ghost, Sol was immediately jumping to conclusions like, you're talking to my Nikki, and getting real upset about it. I'm like, oh my god, Sol, you were not listening to your ghost that wanted you to help people. And I thought that was really cool to remember that, like, a little, I don't think it was really throwaway, but a very important message towards the end of the Book of Green Fairy to do with Sol, and to see that from the character's perspective, he didn't really learn too much. Like, I thought that was like a really intriguing spin that I probably wouldn't have noticed if I didn't go back and refresh my knowledge on the ending of the previous book. Because it shows that, characters can still be flawed after they have a life-changing experience that makes them better people, I guess. But I think really to wrap it up, I did really enjoy Red Devil, and I do really enjoy all the characters in it, like Konstatin, Mike, and Kendall. And I'm really, really excited about continuing on with Black Angel. I would definitely have to say that, like, I say this a lot with a lot of stories I read, but like, I wish I read this sooner. Like, I wish I got into Dangerous Spirits a lot sooner, because Red Devil was released in 2014. Is that right? Yeah, it must have been 2014, and then Black Angel was just this year, and Green Fairy was, I think, 2012. It is, yeah, 2012, and this is the second printing, and yeah, like, I wish I got into them sooner, but then, I'd probably finish reading Red Devil, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't wait for Black Angel, which is 2 years later. Red Devil is illustrated by the beautiful work of Ruckus. There's quite a few cool interior illustrations, but I think my favourite illustration is the little one on the back here of Konstatin, which I can maybe get into better focus, I don't know. But I really love that one. Like I showed a lot of people at work, like, and he's a 19th century honor guard soldier who's like a fox person. um, I think that's it. I don't know there's much else to say. I mean, in summary, I feel like this video is a lot of me just be like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and just, you know, talking at a million miles a pace. I hope, I mean, you know, I hope it came out well. And, yeah, like, I always have problems looking at stories critically, which I'm not sure is a bad thing on my point of view, kind of, because oh, shit, actually, on that top, yeah, on the point of looking at critically, I'm not really good at it, or I don't think I really focus on that when I read. I'm not sure if it's a point or a way, but yeah, but one thing I will say is that I am a bit dense, especially when it comes to like the subtlety and the metaphors of some of the dream sequence that happens. Like I know personally with a lot of things, like I'd rather it maybe like especially stuff that's meant to be interpreted as certain ways, um, could be, you know, explained a bit better. But that's just me. Like there's a few dream sequences in there where I'm reading it and I'm paused and I'm thinking, okay, if I try and interpret the scene, what is it trying to tell me in relation to the context of the story? And I'm like, I, I just don't get it. Like I'd like to get it, or I love reading about the depth that's in certain meaning and shit like that. But I know I can never really get it myself. Like there's the one dream with the statue of Alexander the Third and Second or something, which I was kind of getting it, but I was just too dense. I'm like, look, I'll keep reading and just assume that I think it means what I think it means. But other than that, no, it was great. It was definitely enjoyable, and I didn't want to put it down. I really wanted to keep reading because I really loved Alexei. Um, though I feel like a lot of the text and the dialogue, I was superimposing my own idea of my accent of him. Like there's a lot of times where not his dialogue, but just um I guess uh, the way the story was being told, because it was because it's from his perspective, and there's a few times where I just removed the word the and stuff like that, because that's how I would imagine him telling the story, just with the context of how he speaks. Not all the time. He's not completely like broken English, but there's a few times where it's pretty cool. Like, you know, I guess if I had to look at it critically, there's a few times in stressful situations where his language starts to break down, or he's not sure if he's talking in Russian or English, which he conveys to the reader, but not all the time, but like sometimes. How do I put it? Okay, so when he's talking in Siberian, or when characters are talking in Siberian in the text, it's italicized, and but it's in English, so you know what they're saying. But there's times where Arthur Cargold used it for effect to show it from the character's perspective without ruining the narrative of the story. Where there's a line somewhere towards the end where he shouts something at Sol and Meg, and he's thinking, I don't know if I said that in English or Russian, but the text isn't italicized, it's just plain text. And So you're left. It's interesting. I'm sure if you probably look at the reactions of the characters, you could determine what he said. But I think that was some of those things are pretty cool. Um, and but yeah, yeah, I think that sums it up pretty much well. So Red Devil, I think it had an audiobook. That's one thing I always forget. I think Waterways had an audiobook as well, but let me see if I can Google this. Devil audio book, because I keep hearing it and I'm never. Oh, there is. It's narrated by J. Maxwell. Um, so I think is it two? Okay, yeah. So, uh, they are all audiobooks. So yeah, Green Fairies narrated by J. Maxwell and Red Devils narrated by J. Maxwell, and then Black Angels narrated by someone else, Max Miller. Um, I am not familiar with their work, but I'm pretty sure they're great narrators. Yeah, Waterways is an audiobook as well, and Bridges, which I didn't know. Um, so yeah, you can pick up the audiobook, the ebook you can get from ebook sites as well as baddopebooks.com. The print book was initially printed. It's no, hang on, stop. That's the next book. Okay, Red Devil was published by Soapwolf and printed by Soapwolf, but you can pick it up from For Planet and Rabbit Valley's distributors and other places. Um, and yeah, I'm pretty sure like all his novels, there's like the preview of the first chapter on his FA, so furry. Um, but yeah, so if you have not heard of the Dangerous Spirits, I think you could definitely read from Red Devil. Um, at least from my point of view, I think the story is a lot more accessible than Green Fairy, which it was a good story, but it's a bit I wouldn't say muddled or confusing, but there's a lot going on. Um, I think it's maybe a straighter narrative, really, compared to Green Fairy. Um, yeah. So, I've been Reyfar, and I think that's it. Give me 5 seconds. Yeah, that's it. Red Devil's awesome.